Hi, so here's another video to help you with IXL skill BB.10, completing the square. So the first thing I want you to check to see when you're answering questions is, did you follow the directions? So when you're working, make sure that for your final answers that you are writing your answers as integers, proper or improper fractions, or typically I'll go to the decimal rounded to the nearest hundredth. So I think that's probably key, is making sure that if you're using decimals to round correctly. So let's take a look at these two problems. I just picked two. The first one is a simpler problem, and then the next one is a little bit more complex. So first of all, both of these are in standard form already. So remember, just to review the steps, the first thing we want to do is take the constant from this side of the problem and move it over to the other side. So we have to use an inverse operation to do that. So that means we're adding 47 on both sides. So then we would have h squared minus 6h equals 47. And then I just usually leave some space here because remember, this is where I'm going to complete the square, is right after that. So to complete the square, I take that middle term. So it's whatever my value of b is divided by 2, and then I square that. So in this case, b is negative 6. Half of that is negative 3, and then 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to add 9 onto both sides. And remember, this results in, hopefully this is familiar to you, remember we called that a perfect square trinomial when we looked at these in chapter 7. The first term is a perfect square and the last term is a perfect square. So now I'm going to factor those. So when you factor this side, remember to factor a perfect square trinomial, it's the square root of the first term, the square root of the last term, and then the sign between comes from the middle term. Okay, so this would be h minus, oh, I'm sorry, I just realized I didn't take the square root of the last term, so let me fix that. Can't find my inking tools. Here they are, sorry. Okay, let's fix that. That should be a 3 because the square root of 9 is 3. And then 47 plus 9 is 56. Okay, so now once you get that on both sides, our next step is to square root the left and to square root the right. Okay, so the square root of the left-hand side is h minus 3, and then just using my calculator here, let's see. Square root of 56 is about 7.48. You can go ahead and round that right then. So that's plus or minus 7.48. So then remember, my final step is to add 3 to both sides. So that means I'm going to get two solutions. I have to do positive 7.48 plus 3, which is 10.48. And then I have to do negative 7.48 plus 3, which would be negative 4.48. So those are my two final answers. All right, let's look at problem number 2. So if you notice, first of all, this one has a leading coefficient. So the first thing I'm going to do is just simplify this by dividing everything by 4. Okay, so again, using my calculator, 48 divided by 4. Okay, it gives me 37. So I have 4, oh, nope, sorry, I just took that 4 away. Divided by 4. Let me fix that. So I have q squared minus q minus 37 equals 0. So again, my first step is to move that constant over to the other side. So I have q squared minus q is equal to 37. Okay, this one's a little tricky because you're going to end up with a fraction here, because in your for your middle term, when you complete the square, our middle term is negative 1. So 1 divided by 2 is 1/2, and then when you square that, you get a 4th. So you're adding a 4th onto both sides. Now, I would probably, to be completely honest, we'll probably eventually switch that to a decimal. But down here, when you take this, when you factor this out, remember it's the square root of the first, so q squared becomes q. The square root of 1/4 is 1/2. And then you have minus there, and then this is, whoops, that's an equal sign, 37 1/4. And so let's just go ahead and fix that, and then we're going to square root both sides. And at this point, I'll probably go to the decimal. So I'll say q minus 0.5 is equal to 37.25. And when you square root that, remember you get the positive and the negative value. You want both roots. So you're adding, so q is equal to 37. Oh, and I just realized I didn't square root that. So let me go back and use my calculator and do that. See, these are all the careless mistakes that you got to think about as you're working through this. So I need to do 37 square root of 37.25. Okay, 6.10. And that, again, is rounded to the nearest hundredth. So now I have 6.10 plus 0.5, and then negative 6.10 plus 0.5. So let me finish up these two answers here. So my first solution would be 6.60, and then if I have negative 6.1 plus 0.5, that gives me negative 5.6. And so those are my two answers. You can put the 0 on there if you prefer to do that. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful for you. Please email me back and let me know if you found this helpful and if there's anything else that you need.